What's up everybody, Brian here with BPS Customs, and today we have an exclusive for you. This is the Be Quiet Silent Bass 600 in Special Edition Green, and I'm the first one to get one. So the other day, Be Quiet sent over a big box with the Silent Bass 600, the Pure Power 9 power supply, and the Pure Rock CPU cooler. So right now I have both the power supply and the CPU cooler installed in the case with an MSI Z170A motherboard. But what I want to do is kind of back up a little bit before we get into the actual build process in here. Take a closer look at the case when it's empty and what kind of features it offers you as a builder. So before we get into the case itself, I actually want to take a look at what's going to be going into the case, and that's the Pure Power 9 600 watt power supply and the Pure Rock cooler. First, let's take a look at the power supply. The Pure Power 9 offers 600 watts of 80 plus silver rated efficiency. As with most Be Quiet products, it's extremely quiet while in operation. It offers a semi-modular build with the only attached cable being the 24-pin ATX and the 8-pin EPS. The included cables are entirely black, making this a really nice choice for somebody that wants to put a system together with a nice stealthy build without having to worry about buying extensions. At only 160 millimeters long, it's actually quite a nice compact package that would look pretty slick in almost any build. The Pure Rock cooler is actually Be Quiet's budget option in their line of CPU coolers that ranges from the Pure Rock to the Shadow Rock to the Dark Rock, with each subsequent model able to handle a higher amount of thermal dissipation. The Pure Rock comes with a 120mm Pure Wings fan and mounting solutions for both Intel and AMD sockets. The construction is solid and the radiator fins didn't have any sharp edges for me to cut myself on. The cooler features an aluminum heatsink and 4 6mm heat pipes that run all the way up to the top of the cooler and are capped off by aluminum caps. The fact that the top of the cooler doesn't have protruding copper heat pipes make this cooler a very attractive and color neutral option for those looking for a tower style CPU cooler. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is the mounting solution for the Be Quiet Pure Rock cooler. Now, as you can see over here, the cooler is attached to the socket via a cross beam that runs underneath the main heatsink. Now, the cross beam is fastened on to two plates that are screwed on to posts that are screwed on to screws that are screwed on to the back plate. Now, this seems like an overly complicated mounting solution, and I understand obviously that mounting solutions for tower type coolers are patented and proprietary, and Be Quiet obviously can't use a different mounting solution from another company. However, I would hope that there is a better, more elegant solution than the way that this is mounted. This took me 20 minutes to mount. I build computers every day. I can only imagine how long this would take somebody to mount that's never built a computer before. With that being said though, the Pure Rock is rated for 150 watts TDP of heat dissipation, meaning that it could easily handle a Skylake chip, which is what I think it should be used for. The construction is solid, it's attractive, it's pretty color neutral being silver and black, and it comes with one of Be Quiet's famously good Pure Wings 2 fans. Now on to the main event. This is the Silent Bass 600 in Special Edition Green. The case features all steel construction with an ABS plastic front panel that has a brushed aluminum finish. The highlight and what makes this case special is the green trim around the front panel, the side panel, and the grommets. The left side panel features an extremely large acrylic window that allows you to ogle all your goodies inside. The front panel has a magnetically closing drive bay door that hides 3 5¼ inch bays up top, as well as the fan control switch. I'm happy to say that the magnets hold the door closed well enough so that it won't swing open during normal operation. Unfortunately, the brushed aluminum finish on the front panel does tend to pick up a bunch of fingerprints while you're handling the case, so you might need to clean it off every once in a while. The stylish and angled front ventilation grills are trimmed with the Special Edition Green. These grills run the entire height of the case on both sides of the front panel, affording ample airflow into the interior. This is one of the only parts of the case that's not either a window or lined with thick sound dampening foam. The front panel I/O includes 2 USB 2.0, 2 USB 3.0, a headphone jack, a microphone jack, and a large power button. There are 2 large dust filters included with the case. The first is located behind the front panel and is easily accessible by opening the front door and lifting the filter up out of the slot. To put it back in place, just slide it back down. The second dust filter is located at the bottom of the case. In order to access this one, you'll need to turn the case around so that the back is facing you and pull out the protruding little tab at the bottom. The SilentBase 600 comes with two Be Quiet PureWings 2 fans. The one in the front of the case is 140mm and the rear exhaust is 120mm. There's also support for up to an additional 5 fans and or 3 radiators measuring up to a maximum of 280mm at the top of the case. The case comes with a color match set of rubber rails for hard drive installation, as well as your usual baggy O screws and things. And check this out. Be Quiet made the front panel USB 3.0 connector black. They also included a couple of fan splitters and a SATA power connector to hook up the front panel fan controller. Thanks to the additional drive cages, the SilentBase 600 could hold up to 3 5.25-inch drives, 3 3.5-inch drives, and 3 2.5-inch drives. The rear of the case has 2 of the 3 mounting points for 2.5-inch drives along the back of the motherboard tray. There are also cable management points along the back of the chassis in the appropriate locations. The depth at the back of the chassis is a consistent 3/4 of an inch for cable routing and management. The right side panel is lined with a thick, dense sound dampening foam. The cutout in the middle is actually a removable piece that allows you to provide additional ventilation or mount a fan if you so choose. The case supports graphics cards up to 413mm in length with the hard drive cage removed, and I don't know of any that are that long. The bottom of the chassis is raised up about an inch off of the ground by the included plastic feet. The love it or hate it hard drive cage is removable by thumb screws. There are 2 in the front, but don't forget that there is actually also 1 in the back. Once the screws are removed, the cage slides out with a moderate amount of force. Although it does slide back in fairly easily, make sure it's properly situated on the rails. The motherboard tray features molded in standoffs as well as a center locator pin, which I really dig. So now that we have all the boring stuff out of the way, let's take a look at this case once you put some components in it. So obviously, as you can see, right now I don't have the case fully populated with components. But what I did was I put the components in the system that take up the most room, just to kind of give you an idea of how everything's going to look when you have it in here and what kind of space you're going to have to do other things. Now, when I looked at this case initially, I was a little disappointed that the 5.25-inch bays are not removable. I don't really like that. If you're going to put 5.25-inch bays in a modern case, I would prefer that they be thumb screwed in or something along those lines where you can take them out. Not a lot of people are using 5.25-inch drives anymore at all, and if they are, honestly, they're usually for water cooling. Either the pump goes up there or there's a bay reservoir or something along those lines that sits in the 5.25-inch bay. But with that being said, once I put everything in here, I realized that there was an enormous amount of room still in this case. I think that's likely because a lot of my recent builds have been in cases that have PSU shrouds on them. Now, shrouds are great because obviously they hide the power supply, they hide the wiring, you don't see any of that nastiness, and then it kind of comes out of the back of the case as you want it to. But the thing that power supply shrouds do is that they cut off the entire bottom of the case, meaning that from here down is unusable space. Now, if you have a power supply shroud in your system, like the build that I did in the Phanteks Enthoo Mini ITX chassis up here, you kind of miss out on a lot of space on the bottom of the case, like this right here, and this area over here. If you were to remove this drive cage, now this becomes very usable space. And what you could do in that space is mount things like pumps and reservoirs. Now, this obviously isn't for everybody because not everybody is water cooling in their build. But for people that are looking to do something in this case other than put a regular air-cooled system in it, obviously that's a huge bonus. You're not restricted by the power supply shroud as far as what you could do vertically in the case. Additionally, because the case does have these drive cages here, it does provide you the opportunity to put more storage in the system. Now, a lot of modern cases have completely done away with something like a hard drive cage, which means that you're limited to storage either behind the motherboard tray or along the power supply shroud. This is likely fine for most people, but if you're building a system and happen to need 3 or 4 spinning platter hard drives, you're gonna need something like a cage. And the fact that this cage is removable makes it so that it's not a problem for people that don't want it, but it is there for people that do. And I give Be Quiet a thumbs up for that. But other than that side of the case, you can see that the grommeted openings along the side of the motherboard tray and the bottom of the motherboard tray are what I would say perfectly placed. You obviously can't have entire channels be openings, but they have 3 openings along the side and 1 along the bottom, which should allow plenty of room for routing cables. You have an opening down here, which is going to be great for your SATA cables and your USB 3 header, and you also have an opening up here, which is going to be useful for your 24-pin cable. Now, one thing that I do wish is that the top grommeted opening was slightly further down because a lot of 24-pin headers on motherboards are not at the very top of the motherboard. But that being said, I think this is a fine implementation of cutouts at the back of a motherboard tray, and you're not going to run into any problems where you're not going to be able to get your cables to the ports on the motherboard. One thing that I'm not a huge fan of with this case is the mechanism for fastening the front panel to the case itself. There are actually 3 clips on each side of the front panel that clip into the case. In order to remove the front panel, what you actually need to do is remove both side panels, depress the clips on the inside of the case, and then push the panel out. Now, as I've done it several times in this case, it's actually become easier and easier, and that's likely because the clips are plastic. Now, if you're going to implement a solution like this for taking off the front panel, which I don't really like to begin with, my recommendation would be to make them metal. Now, I know that obviously that's a little more expensive and maybe a little more difficult to implement, but it would prevent fatigue of the material as you are unclipping the front. Now, I've had this case for about a week now, and initially when I got the case, it was very difficult to remove the front panel because the clips were very stiff. Now, the front panel kind of pops off if I just tug on it because the plastic clips have fatigued. I'm not a fan of this mechanism in general. I would much prefer that you be able to remove the front panel entirely without taking the side panels off the case. One other thing about this case that I'm not entirely fond of is the mechanism for securing the side panels to the case. Now, Be Quiet uses regular thumb screws, which have been industry standard for God knows how many years. But with companies like Phanteks and Corsair innovating in this area and having hinges or latches or something else that allows a door to swing out instead of having to be unscrewed and detached entirely, also with the omnipresence of things like captive thumb screws, I would like to see Be Quiet take one of these routes. And if you're going to use thumb screws, use captive thumb screws. If you're going to make this a high-end chassis, use a different mechanism for securing the side panels. Now, with that being said, this case has proven to be fantastic to build in. I haven't put a full system in here yet. That's coming. But every operation that I've done with the case so far has gone smoothly. There's plenty of room inside the case to do all kinds of crazy stuff. There's enough room behind the motherboard tray to route cables. But even though the 5¼ inch bay is actually here, the amount of space that's between the cooler and the 5¼ inch bay is plenty. This should allow for adequate airflow from the front to the rear of the case without any interference. The coloring on the case matches the GeForce GTX logo on NVIDIA cards, which is awesome for people that want to put together a color match system but want to use Founders Edition graphics cards. But what's with the grommets at the back of the case, Be Quiet? Who is actually using exterior water cooling anymore? If anybody has recently used a water cooling solution with these grommets, please let me know in the comments down below. But overall, I'd say this was a really solid build experience in this case. Everything is open and easy to access. The drive tray comes out with minimal effort, and the 5¼ inch bays, even though they're not removable, are easy to work around and don't get in the way of anything. Even though I'm not a huge fan of green cases in general, this is the right amount and the right shade of green to actually aid in your build process, as opposed to being kind of a, oh, what do I do about this green? This is a case you could use and build around the color scheme. So yes, I will be building in this case in the future. In fact, you might even see it in one of my best PC you could build videos in a couple of weeks. I'd say the gripes that I have with this case are minor and won't really negatively impact your build experience in any meaningful way. So that's it, guys. This video is a wrap. Thanks for sticking around as we took a look at the Be Quiet Silent Base 600, the Be Quiet Pure Power 9, and the Be Quiet Pure Rock CPU cooler. Stay tuned for more content just like this. Get subscribed to the channel if you're not already. You could use this link right here to do that. And if you want to take a look at some of my other content, you can find it right down below. Did you guys know that you can put both an AMD card and an NVIDIA card in the same system? No? Watch this one. Did you guys know the GTX 1070s and SLI blow the doors off a 1080? No? Watch this one. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.